minute about coming back to have something a formal presentation wise. Yeah, that would be great.
Great.
So I see that we're live now. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Danielle Fitzko. I'm the Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation. Happy to be here with you today. Back in the building here. And I brought with me some of our leadership team. Kate Eberly. She's our Legislative Affairs and Communications Manager, and Oliver Pearson, who's our Director of Forests. We have a few other people on our leadership team that aren't here, but wanted to just provide an opportunity to start to meet our team. And we also have our Deputy Secretary for the Agency of Natural Resources here, Charles Martin.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, I'm Eladius for the Vermont Forest Products Association and the Art Bureau.
Oh, good. And what's your name?
Wizzapo.
Nice to meet you. We should introduce ourselves. We have, as you will remember, a smaller committee this year than we've had the last couple of years anyway, and a number of new faces. So you know me, but I'm David Durfee. I represent the Bennington 3 district in Shaftesbury, and the Shaftesbury, Sunderland, and Glastonbury, and I'm chairing the committee again this year. I'm very, very happy to be back here.
Sure. Good morning, Vice Chair, Representative Heather Supernode. This is my third time on the committee. I represent Windsor 4, the towns of Barnard, Pomfret, Bridgewater, and West Hartford.
John,
And most of you, John O'Brien, I represent Windsor Orange 1, which is Royalton, my hometown.
Greg Bird, Cabot Danville, teaching. My first year.
Michelle Wyndham 3, which is Westminster, where I live, Rockingham, and
Richard Nelson, Orleans 1, Town of Derby, and I'm playing Bill Sladek.
Okay. That's actually Fish and Wildlife, but we all work together.
Morning, welcome, Jay Lipsky, the Mile 1. Second go round, second by Andy.
I'm Leland Morgan. I represent all of Grand Isle County and the western portion, Milton. It's the first time in this committee. I've been in others, but first time in this.
So did you want to just talk a little bit about the work of the department and how it might relate to our committee, the work that we're doing? And then if others would like to come up to the table and say anything, we're happy to, have that as well.
Yeah, I can come back and give you for a more formal sort of high level, but I'll give you sort of the elevator speech on forest parks and recreation. I like to say we are FPR, we're forests, recreation, and we're parks and recreation. When we think of forests, I like to think of Vermont as forest strong, right? With 76% land base is forested. And so our job, it looks at all forests, and we'd like to think of it as keeping our forests intact, healthy, resilient, and sustainably managed. We have a big team of foresters. Probably don't know many of them because they're in the woods working hard, but everything from a large team that works on private land with the Use Value Appraisal Program. We have a state lands team. There's over 360,000 acres of state lands, and we manage them at a landscape scale for multiple use. We have a forest health team that gets up in the air and flies over and tracks the health of forests and looking out for any sort of threats to our forests. We have an urban forestry team that looks like downtown. That's where my roots are, like the trees right on the State House lawn. We have a watershed forestry team that looks at forestry operations and how to protect water quality during those operations. And a wildland fire team that was very busy this fall. I'll be happy to come back and tell you all about that. It was stressful this past year. And looking at how we enhance those services going forward. Forest economy, small but mighty team. They really look out for all those businesses in the industry, which is probably not as recognized, but over $2 billion of economic impact from the forest economy. And we have a roadmap that the legislature asked for back in 2022, which is sort of a guiding document for the next 10 years of looking at how we support the forest products sector as we go forward. And we have an implementation committee now. Representative Lipsky does sit on that. We'll be meeting again in January. So we're really looking at how to support this important industry going forward. So that's Team Forestry. Oliver's your main contact on that team. Vermont State Parks, 55 developed state parks all across the state in many rural areas, economic driver as well, over $100 million it brings in. We blow up in the summer with bringing on about 450 seasonal staff to manage our state parks. They're a fantastic resource for the state. Conserved land, but an opportunity to get out and enjoy, and we really take pride in strong customer service for our state parks. We had over 1 million visitors this past year, even with 2 pretty significant flooding events that impacted our operations. Groton State Forest was hit pretty hard, and we have several parks there. And then our last team is our lands administration and recreation. And so they oversee sort of outdoor recreation in the state, which is another huge economic driver for the state. We're ranked number 2 in the nation, just behind Hawaii in the gross domestic product. And so that's pretty incredible. We have the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative, which is a group that's really looking at how to increase that economic driver in the state. And we've provided millions of dollars in grants to communities and nonprofits to support how to bring in more resources, but also how to make it more resilient for climate change, and also thinking about equity in outdoor recreation. But we also have a strong conservation arm as well on that team. So that's Team FPR. It's about 130 staff year round. And then, like I said, we blow up in the summertime. I kind of just did the high level, maybe more detail than you wanted.
No, that's
Okay.
Well, committee members, anybody have questions about anything you just heard, or, yeah?
Did you rehire, was it a dedicated climate change forester?
We do have a dedicated climate forester. Her name is Al Freeman. She's been on maybe
Year and change.
a little over a year. She's fabulous. More than welcome to have her come in and talk to you. She's brilliant and really looking out how we, across all program areas, she really supports all of our team.
Yeah, her work has been very pronounced in the long-range management plans that we've been working on in the past couple of years in terms of the climate section. So taking a look at the Worcester Range Management Plan, she introduced our current format for thinking about how climate change impacts forest management and vice versa, how we're managing forests to make them more climate resilient. So she's been real active in that space. She's starting to make sure our county foresters, so part of our private lands program is 13 county foresters working with use value appraisal program participants, thousands of Vermonters who have forest enrolled in that program, who, if they now are interested in managing forests for climate resiliency, have some tools and options to do that. And our county foresters are rolling out some of the ideas and products that Al has generated to landowners. It's interesting, 10 years ago, the words like climate and carbon didn't really feature in those use value appraisal management plans, but we did a word search last year and there was already over 100 plans where landowners were saying, I'm interested in managing my forest for carbon resiliency or carbon sequestration, excuse me. So Al's work is she's very much in demand, and we're thrilled to have her as part of our team.
Yeah.
What's Al's last name?
Freeman.
Okay.
Do you know approximately how many people are hired within your department?
Well, we have about 130, maybe 35 year-round staff, and then 450 that we bring in. That's just for state parks during the season. And then we also have seasonal staff we bring in to support our forestry and recreation, because we only have 3 recreation specialists for all of our state lands. And so we bring on our statewide recreation team as well to support. About 135. Yep. I think forestry is the biggest with a little over 60. State parks is in the 40s. And then we call it DLAR, but you would not know what that means, Division of Lands and Administration and Recreation. And then we have a business office, which is the behind the scenes, the circulatory system of our department. And we move a lot of grant money out, and we bring a lot of grant money in. And you can imagine like state parks is like a business enterprise in the state. And imagine how much ice and toilet paper we buy. So there's a lot of like processing for a business office. We were way underwater a couple years ago with probably 4 staff, and now we're up to like 11 by bringing in other resources. And we just had to focus on our business office because like if we can't move everything, then everything else sort of halts. So that's an amazing team there that carries a lot for us.
The 130 or so folks are the year-round employees are mostly based here in Montpelier.
This is headquarters here in Montpelier, but we have 5 regional offices because a lot of our work is regional, it's land, we work on the lands, whether you're managing state lands or you're working with private landowners or you're doing your forest health plots in a certain area. Most of them are in district offices. I'd say each district office probably has 20 or so, because also state parks are regionally based. So we are heavy out around the state. The headquarters staff are the ones that sit behind the computers and in meetings all day.
Where are those district offices located?
St. Johnsbury, Essex, Rutland, Springfield, and Barry. We do have two satellite offices, a small satellite office in White River Junction for private land foresters, and then at Sterling College, we have one, just making it accessible for landowners. State Parks does have some like maintenance shops that are separate from the district offices because that's where they have all their equipment. So there's some staff that are facilities oriented in maintenance shops.
At the Vermont Agriculture and Environmental Lab in Randolph, with forest pathology lab and a forest health expert based there. If you're ever there, check it out. Her collection of insects and forests, based pests and pathogens is really stunning.
Be a good visit. People don't recognize state parks as we are the 3rd largest owner of buildings for the state of Vermont. About $280 million in like infrastructure assets. I can't even tell you how many miles of like underground pipes and all we manage. It's when we're full on a weekend, we're bigger than like Burlington. Like it's a robust system to manage.
Representative Lipsky, any question?
You mentioned 1 million visitors. I think the governor yesterday pointed that out. But I was just curious, historically, is that a record number of visitors? Is this a statistic you've got?
We've gone up dramatically over the past, let's say, 10 years. This is not the first year we've hit over 1 million visitors. It's probably like the 4th or 5th year we have. But remarkable when we've had parks shut down for extended periods of time. So we are seeing an overall increase in our state visitation to state parks. And that 1 million visitors are paying an admission to get into state parks. Does not include all the visitors that are year round. Like there are people visiting state parks now. I mean, I know I go to my local park and walk my dog and they're not counting that. It's really those that actually pay an admission fee to get in.
If you want just follow-up feedback, I don't really know more. We've got a lot of parks, but I hear in tourist town a lot of gratitude toward the state parks and appreciation for them from not just visitors, but also locals. So they're a source of real pride. I hope you understand how much they're valued.
Thank you for saying that. This team works really hard and been working really hard when we get flooding and whatnot. I will also say there's an expansion in state parks that we don't actually charge admission to that is straining the system a little bit as well, because our parks team knows how to manage people, where other teams that manage state lands are more like they know how to manage the land. But you have places like where you're at, Representative Lipsky, like Bigham Falls, high use area, state lands. Our parks teams manages that. And we have to now put in additional infrastructure to manage the people to protect the resource. So we need toilets, we need better trails, we need better parking because people are going there and we want them to be safe and we want to protect the resource. And so those are areas that we need to meet the demand, but we don't actually bring in any revenue to support it. So that's becoming a little bit of a strain on our ability, but we're creative.
Representative Nelson?
Yeah, were you able to have the state parks open for the eclipse?
We had several of them open, not all of them. We tried to provide areas where we knew we'd have great viewing, that would be, so yes. And we also wanted to make sure we had the right services there. Like we wanted to make sure we had toilets and be able to clean. So we had a whole system and plan around the eclipse, and it was remarkable.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here.
It was a lot of work and thinking through it, but it was, yeah, I think we all feel the same.
Yeah, I actually observed the eclipse with my family at Button Bay State Park and just was driving around trying to find a nice place and saw, oh, State Park is open.
Yeah.
So, worked out really well.
We couldn't open all of them because our seasonal staff aren't on at that point. So it's the people management and protecting the resource again. But we, all across the state, we have places.
Yeah.
One thing I've never thought about, do you have a relationship with UVM Extension, or is there sort of a research running? Because like the Agency of Ag and UVM Extension have this great history.
We have a strong relationship with UVM Extension. They do not have a robust forestry program as they do with agriculture, but the Urban and Community Forestry Program, we have a direct partnership with, where they have 2 staff and we have 3 staff, and they work as a team. Is a partnership. Dr. Ali Kasiba, who's their UVM Extension forester, who's a climate forester as well. We have an agreement with them as well, and she supports our work with the state. So they really that's the only staff that they have really is we work with all of them.
On the more academic side, there's UVM professors that are collaborating with us to do research projects to understand what types of forest management will help improve forest health, will make the forest more resilient to climate change. So for example, Dr. Tony D'Amato, who's a well-known, silviculture and forest management expert, collaborates with us on plots where we look at the forest health ahead of time, do some type of management intervention and see how the forest recovers or changes afterwards. We're trying to manage for older growth forest conditions. And sometimes you have to do that, a little bit of harvesting to achieve those older growth forest conditions. And so we have plots around the state with Tony to study which types of interventions create those either healthier forest or older growth forest conditions. So that's a great partnership. And Dr. Kasiba will be working with us. We were lucky enough to secure a $5 million grant from the U.S. Forest Service with Inflation Reduction Act funds to help landowners manage their forests to promote climate resiliency. And through a partnership with Dr. Kasiba, she'll be developing the forest resilience standard, which then will implement with foresters, loggers, and landowners statewide.
I wonder if Deputy Commissioner Everly would like to come up to the table.
You mean Kate?
Kate.
Yeah.
You just got a promotion.
I am really bad about that, so I apologize that I know titles are important.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll be doing legislative affairs and communications for the department.
Okay, great. And if in that role, then if we individually as legislators have questions, we should come seek you out about the work department or are interested in possibly finding out how the department feels about the legislative idea.
Yes, I'm at your service. I'll be in the building. So flag me down at any time and I'll leave my card while I'm here. But we'd love to get you out on tours or, help you connect with whatever expert you're interested in learning about. So just let me know how I can help.
We can find you on the department's webpage, and your office is up on the hill here.
Yes, we're at National Life.
And you spend a lot of your day in the actual state house,
Yes,
so we can find you in the hallway too. Okay.
so I'll be around.
All right, Mr. Martin, would
Yes.
you like to come up to the table and tell us a little bit about your work too? Because the department, FPR lies within, it's one of 3 departments in the Agency of
Correct.
Natural Resources.
So as far as my role in the building, for purpose of introduction, makes a lot of sense to first try to find Kate and just work through the departments, and then we'll all talk afterward. Kind of jurisdictionally, the way the secretary's office will function is the issues that touch all of our departments will probably fall under my purview, and I might be a good first approach for those questions. But going to Kate makes a lot of sense for FPR specific things initially. And we can do a much more in-depth agency overview probably at a later date when I can get Julian here as well, if that works for the committee.
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure that would be helpful.
It's very good to see everyone again and meet the new people.
Any questions? Thank you. And Oliver, was there anything else that you wanted to say? Come on up.
Yeah, I stay here, we sit there.
Why don't you come up?
One thought, which is something that is on my mind quite a bit, just building on what Danny said, around 76% of the state is forested. If you look at the data on forest cover change over time, the last 10 years have been very stable. We've had small amounts of loss, small amounts of gain, but the forest cover data that we get from our annual forest inventory and analysis plots, which is just a sampling, but we extrapolate to get a sense of forest cover statewide, shows that the last 10 years, we've had a very stable amount of forest cover. So we're losing forested development, sometimes agricultural, but we're gaining forest as well. So that's encouraging. We do have a high number of forest pests and invasive species and pathogens that we're struggling with. Emerald ash borer is an example that you've probably heard about. Beech leaf disease is another. So our forest health team works with landowners and internally on state lands to figure out how to address, contain, and mitigate against those threats. And then works with the forest economy to decide, hey, emerald ash borer is going to come into this area. Let's see if we can get some timber out ahead of time, ash species, while they still have marketable value, and then leave some behind that we hope will be resistant to ash and allow the species to continue even after the wave of emerald ash borer has come through. So that's exciting. The other thing I'd mention is one statistic that we track is called the net growth to removals ratio. How much does the forest grow on an annual basis? And it's net growth. So you have that net growth statistic with how much biomass is added, subtracting natural mortality. So that's net growth. And then removals is how much is taken out of Vermont forest via logging, via management. And so if that number is 1-to-1, the net growth equals the amount that's removed. And now it's sort of represent a steady state. The number in Vermont is at 3 right now. So our net growth is 3 times higher than the amount that we're removing. So that means we're adding a lot of biomass to our forests. Our forests are getting older, so the growth isn't as rapid, but we're not really removing as much wood from the forest as we used to. That number's gone up over time. And so active management of forests is a great tool to promote forest health, to get durable wood products out to market, to support the forest economy. And with a net growth to removal ratio of 3, we have opportunities to do more active forest management, both with private landowners through the use value appraisal program and as well on state lands. And for various reasons, the number of forest management timber sales that we've offered on state lands has decreased over the past couple of years, but we're trying to turn that around and get to a point where we're achieving our sort of forest health, forest management objectives, and ensuring that our forests on state lands are as healthy as possible. So that net growth to removals ratio of 3 is higher than we'd like, and we're trying on a statewide basis, and we'll see how our management activities can perhaps bring that down a bit over time. I'll leave it at that for today.
Anything else?
Do you find, or have studies showed that a young forest, rapidly growing forest will sequester more carbon than a mature forest?
Yes, studies show that period of when after a selective harvest or a logging operation in that area of sort of 5 to 15 years when forests are coming up very quickly, that is the period of the most active and rapid carbon sequestration. And of course, sequestration is different from storage, but your question was on sequestration. So yes, young forests have been shown to sequester more carbon than older mature forests. We have a great short document that talks about managing forests for climate resiliency that actually summarizes the current state of the scientific literature on that subject that I could share with the committee, and it makes that point among others.
Love to see it. Wood frame houses store carbon.
Correct. Durable wood products store carbon, for some decades. And I think that's part of our calculus when we think about what's the net impact of forest management on, the state's climate and carbon goals.
Do you find the lack of in-state wood processing, sawmills, to be a problem?
We've certainly had mill closures and pulp mill, paper mills closed over the past few years. Representative Litsky knows a lot about this. I think that, and many of our wood products that are harvested now are unfortunately leaving the state, going to New Hampshire, going to Quebec, going elsewhere for processing. Is it a problem? I think it's more, I view it as an opportunity. How do we support the forest products sector to be as vibrant and as viable as possible in Vermont? What types of innovation is needed to establish new wood processing facilities? What products does the economy, does the sector need, and how can Vermont meet those? I'll just finish with an anecdote. There's through the Working Lands Enterprise Board, which is a Vermont state legislature funded initiative, we provide grants to help agricultural and wood products businesses grow, expand, thrive. And one of them is to a cabinet maker near Heinsberg. The Working Lands Enterprise grant he received helped him buy a digital router so he could produce cabinets made of hardwood more quickly for his clients. He used to get his wood at A. Johnson Lumber Mill. When they closed, he had to go to sourcing his wood from a company in Massachusetts. So, I think that shows that the closure of certain mills has forced people to look outside Vermont to buy the raw materials that they need. And that's unfortunate. So that's something that we'd like to figure out how to address. And as Danny mentioned, the Vermont Forest Futures Roadmap is all about supporting the forest economy to be vibrant, to grow, to expand, to promote sustainability, et cetera. So I think we're trying to to correct some of those existing challenges that way.
Thank you.
Representative Lipsky.
Yeah. Oliver, thank you. Data or statistics matter, especially when there's a lot of I'll call it activism that is trying to highlight a certain threat, and we all care immensely about keeping forests forested. And so the number that I've heard twice today, 76% forested. 2 years ago, it was maybe 75, and then I've heard people say we're down to 73, we're losing X. So I really appreciate you highlighting or maybe explain to us. It's very exciting to me to hear that the percentage is growing, and we know when certain ag land is abandoned, it does get into early succession. But so if I like to be accurate when I'm out there being an activist for forests and forest management. Is 76 the latest and greatest, most accurate?
Yeah, we'll get back to you on that. I think it's if it's not the latest and greatest, it's very close. I've looked very closely at the forest inventory and analysis data for Vermont to get a sense, because when I started in this role over a year ago, I was frequently running into publications and discussions saying we're losing forest cover in Vermont at a rapid rate. And if you look back over the last 30 years, there is a downward trend over the last 30 years. But just over the last 10 years, it's more like this, and it's very stable. And so I think that's an important distinction or clarification to make. Yes, we peaked around 30 years ago in terms of forest cover in Vermont, but the last 10 years, we've entered into a steadier state with intra-annual variability. And it's hovering right around 76%. So we can provide the committee with the most recent. We have data from the Forest Inventory and Assessment plots that then we extrapolate the statewide through 2023 at this point, and we can provide the committee with that data.
Yeah, and you will go 74 or 76, whether or not you include water. 76 if it's just land-based, then typically 74 if you include certain.
Yeah. So
Well, we can get you the exact numbers, but that's why you may hear different words.
Okay.
Different percentages.
that's really helpful. Yeah, thank you. And I don't think that I'd heard the 76, 74% number. I remember taking testimony or hearing testimony last year on that. And it's interesting, of course, because this committee is also dealing with agriculture, and the percentage of land that is forested is by definition almost not available for agriculture. We know that that's not always the case. But I don't know that we'd heard the ratio that you talked about, that also really probably important number for us to be aware of, and how those two numbers, how those two measures, work together. Be interesting to be thinking about. I'm going to give you the last word just because I don't want to cut too much into lunchtime, but go ahead.
I don't either, but it's poignant. 3% growth to harvest ratio matters a lot. Because 2 years ago, we were going by a 2.3%. And by the way, Maine is lower than we are, but Massachusetts, Connecticut might be 8 or 9. And part of it's very encouraging that we're moving in a direction of everyone feeling if you're growing 3 times more annually, then what you're harvesting, that's definitely sustainable, and it's
Yes.
all that. So I think that's pretty exciting news as well. And an important ratio.
Well, if no one has anything else that burning to ask, why don't we stop there for the moment? I jotted down a number of things that you'd mentioned that you could come back to share with us on. And Commissioner Fisco, if you have a moment to stay, we can,
Sure.
then maybe do some thinking about scheduling some of that.